Ladies and gentlemen, we are back on the Wired Up podcast. I am your host of the Wired Up podcast. I am your inaugural BWDU World Heavyweight Champion Ace Reed and your first ever inaugural Patreon Intercontinental World Champion. Yes, I did win it. And I am here with a man that is no stranger to sports. My bad. Wired Up podcast. I get them too mixed up sometimes. I mean, he was on Sportswire Radio not long ago, and he is no stranger to the Wired Up podcast. As a matter of fact, he was the first ever guest on the Wired Up podcast, and he has been making his long-awaited return on the Wired Up podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I am here with the destructive Jack Delta. My friend, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me back. I did kind of forget that I actually was the very first guest. And that was back when, for like history people, this was back when it was an Instagram Live as the streaming platform rather than what we use now. So,
yeah, I mean, I use StreamYard now, and for people that don't know, the Wired Up podcast used to be on Instagram Live, and yes, I still do have the footage. I did not delete it, and if you're wondering where it's going to be uploaded, it will be uploaded on the Patreon. Make sure you guys go subscribe to the BWDU Patreon, where we will be using that money to contribute to a ring. Now, moving awesome. Yes, but anyways, moving aside, usually I would ask a question like, what got you into backyard wrestling or some other question. But considering this guy, we've had him on before and we've already asked him that question, we're going to ask him another question that we have had in mind. And how was the recovering from your elbow? How was it like? And how fast did you recover from it?
So with my elbow, I knew when I got injured, because I got injured with the Falls Count Anywhere match with Jason Storm. I got Irish whipped into the corner, and usually when I take the Irish whip, I usually try to like pocket it on my shoulder, or I try to go into it a different way. And he just whipped me too fast. The space was too small, and I just went straight elbow. Took all of the brunt like straight on my elbow. And from the time period of, I believe I taped it in June. From that time period to, I think it was like early August, I continued to wrestle. So all of the stuff that you've seen on the final stretch of the WCEF run, I had my elbow injury. The ESW live event I went to, that I had my elbow injury. The few Omega Michigan wrestling matches I did, and a few got cut because I actually did end up, we'll talk about that later, but did end up winning a championship there that had to get scrapped because of my elbow injury. And so the footage does float out there of me beating Jason Storm for the OMW United States title. But I had to scrap it because I couldn't go back and defend it and lose it. I worked through all of that with my elbow. And I finally got to a point where it was like I had a weekend, and these are all in a row. I had a weekend where I had to do the Detroit Riot match with Jason Storm. I had to do another Omega Michigan wrestling taping, and then I believe I had one more thing the next weekend after that. And it was getting to the point that like anytime I'd bump or anytime I'd do anything with my elbow, it kind of just like how do you describe it? It's kind of like that like shooting feeling that you'll get where it, like you touch it and it just sends a shock up your
pins and needles.
Yeah, like pins and needles. Yeah,
pins and needles.
And so anytime I'd bump or anytime I'd do anything with that, it like really like aggravated it. And at that point too, I was like kind of getting burnt out because it was just like I had been booked on 3 or 4 or 5 or something rosters all concurrently. And I felt like even though I was like doing stuff, I wasn't having fun with it because it was just kind of like I'd work. And then it's the weekend and then I'd have to wrestle. And then like the next day, even though I'm like still like recovering from that, I'd have to go back to work and then work, you know? So in addition to feeling burned out, my elbow was also fucked up. And because with like the recovery time of the elbow, what ended up happening was when I hit it, I initially thought I like broke a bone and I was just kind of like doing something with that. But what it ended up being is that there's like scar tissue collected on top of my elbow. And essentially it's just like an extra little like piece of like muscle or something that like functionally now my elbow is like perfectly fine, but I have to get it like removed. I still kind of like have it, but what it is essentially like anytime you like press on it or you put like too much weight on it, it'll send that like pins and needle thing back up through the elbow, and just like it's the most uncomfortable feeling in the world, because a lot of the times it's just like it won't happen during wrestling because I'm like cognitively like aware of it, but like say I'm like laying in bed and I'm about to like go to bed, and I try to like adjust on my arm. Oh my god, like it's like an instant reminder that like it'll like fuck everything up. So so the recovery process is eventually I'm gonna have to I think I'm gonna have to go like get this like cut out, because I think it just is just kind of still there. But
yeah,
the recovery process is essentially like I stopped wrestling for a little bit, and like I feel like the that's the funny thing about how like the internet works is like I did hundreds of things before I took my breaks last year, but like I feel like a lot of the people only like follow like what I didn't do apparently, and so people are just gonna remember that like I took 2 breaks last year, but I still ended up doing more during my like wrestling time last year than I did like most people last year. So I'm still proud of it.
yeah. I mean, from what I remember, I believe you announced it on an Instagram live about your elbow injury.
Yeah, I did, and that was partly because we needed actual like conveyable like footage of me saying that, so the editors at ROEW could put that in and explain why, like, even though like I won the #1 contendership for the world title, I was backing out of the opportunity. And so literally the day I went and got an X-ray for it to confirm that it wasn't broken, I still had the wrappage and like the bandage on it, so I could get the visual of that for the live.
I mean, we're glad to have you back, dude. I mean, it's good to have you back in backyard wrestling and have you back in the community. And actually, let's talk about your most recent match now. Unfortunately, your most recent match, I believe, you lost the XCW New Age Championship. Now, how did you feel that you lost it? And if you retained it, do you think you would have held it any longer?
Well, the thing with the XCW New Age Championship is it has a I'm trying to remember the title. I think it's like the NWA television title. There's a rule set in place that if you defend it successfully 7 times, you're allowed to cash in for the title that's above it. And so my goal was to do that, because like as cool as it is winning the New Age Championship, I believe it's like the tertiary or like the 4th most important title in the company. And so even though like I had my footnote in history in XCW of winning it and holding it for a month, essentially, that's never enough. You know, like as a wrestler, like you always like want to gung ho, you want to aim higher than what you normally get. And
Yeah,
so
obviously.
my eyes with the New Age Championship was to eventually cash in on the International Championship, right? So losing it is kind of detrimental because that throws a wrench in that plan. So whenever XCW is ready to have me back out, because I'm not contractually obligated to be there anymore, because obviously like I lost the New Age Championship to Jesse Justice, I'm ready to go there. But losing the New Age Championship always sucks, because it's just like, you know, that for people that follow me, that was the 27th championship I've won. And for every championship that you win, regardless of like vacating it or straight up losing it, eventually you're going to have to let it go. And so that is the 27th time I've lost a championship as well. So it sucks.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you always say, quality over quantity. So at least you had the chance to defend the championship, which is what matters.
That is
But
true. That is true.
yeah, but actually, there's a few federations that you are very familiar with that you have mentioned earlier, and that is WCEF and ESW. Now, Season 8 of ESW Shockwave is coming very soon, and we know that you showed up at ESW Season 7 and you won the Interstate Championship, but shortly lost it after you defended it
It's a
against
trend.
Jacob Prodigy.
Yeah, it's a trend. Every time I
But
win a championship, I lose it in the next defense. It's like I have like the worst rate for that. But
I mean, at
ES
least you got to wrestle Jacob Prodigy, so
that
that
is
seemed
true. Yeah, wrestling Jacob Prodigy is like more of an achievement than like half the titles I have won, just because of like
yeah,
what he means for the community. But for
yeah.
ESW, I'm gonna correct you a little bit, just because this has been like the one thing that is like agitated me about ESW, like being one of the only people to cross over with ESW. So ESW is bar none the biggest backyard wrestling company to ever exist, in my opinion.
Hands
I
down.
know there's Grimm's Toy Show, but I view that more as like a vlog than like a backyard wrestling company. I know there's others, but ESW is bar none the biggest. Like back in the day, it used to get millions of views, and anytime you go under any backyard wrestling thing, you'll see comments about all of the Garza brothers. So like Alex Austin and Wicked J, MOD, Osiris, all the like classics. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've been to ESW twice now. The first time I went, you said it was part of season 7. It technically was supposed to be a part of season 7, but essentially it's a small event that they filmed around me because I went out at an inconvenient time, even though we had it planned. And I'm not going to get into that because I don't get into personal details. It's not my thing to talk about.
Yeah, that's fair.
But essentially, the episode that we had filmed for turned into a part 1 and a part 2. And it turned into me end up winning the Interstate Championship, and it's turned into like a farewell for the yard that they were in. And because like after that, they're starting this new season, or they're in like a new yard now for the previous season. And the other place I went was a live event, but it was non-canon. It didn't get uploaded to YouTube. I believe it's on Patreon, or their Patreon. But that's the big thing with ESW is I've gone to ESW twice now. I've been in working relationships with them for 2 years, but I've yet to do a full season. A full season of ESW where I'm there from episode 1 and I'm there until the end. And regardless of the storylines that are put in place for me, regardless of the people that I have to face, regardless of what I have to do, that's one of my goals for this year. And unfortunately, I can confirm that I'm not a part of this upcoming season. It wasn't taped at the time that I could do it, but hopefully the future holds that I will be able to be a part of a season in the future. So then hopefully next time they start gearing up, I'll have my flight ready. I'll have everything ready for that. So that's my goals with ESW. I hope that's able to go through this year.
Well, fingers crossed. I mean, who knows what the future holds? Maybe you'll actually get to wrestle Austin G.
Yeah, I know. That's one of the big things I want this year too. Is I want, like, it's been cool. The 2 times I've gone out and wrestled, and the only 2 people I've had interaction with on screen have been ESW's. I would call them like the Shockwave wrestlers. So they're like the newer guys, like Jacob Prodigy and Blake Pierce. But I want the old motherfuckers that were like back on the ground. I want the people that like people talk about in the comment sections for like the years and years and years that they've done this. So like the Austin G's, the MODs, the Osiris's, like
Short Stack.
Short Stack.
Deftone.
Even the boss man himself, Alex G. Like any of the old men I can get. Like, I know their bodies are decrepit because they bumped on Texas ground for like God knows how long, but those are the motherfuckers that I want, like, more than anybody. But yeah, that's it. That's it on my ESW rant. I'd like get that one out.
Yeah. Hopefully we see you in a season of ESW Shockwave very, very soon. let's hope, fingers crossed. But another federation we should talk about is WCEF. Now, the last time you showed up on WCEF, it was their final show, and you famously took a light tube. I think that was your first time taking a light tube
Yes.
from on the back. But now that they're back for, I think, a month only, what are your thoughts on them returning for only a month? And would you ever see yourself being on WCEF No Limits again?
No, I know the backstage of how that essentially happened, and I mean, not all of it. I've got like general cliff notes because I keep in contact to a certain extent with the guys, and I'm proud that they were able to come back because essentially, like, a lot of them are going to be like very soon like splitting off in their own different career paths. And that's the initial reason WCF ended in the first place. So I'm glad they were able to get back together and do like one final run, because it's essentially just kind of like, Marvel's got that like what if show where they like take a bunch of the movies and like take the plot points and they're like, what if this happened instead, or what if this happened instead? And the final show, like, if I'm not mistaken, I think every title changed hands. So like a lot of the people that won the titles won them for the very first time. So it's like when they won it on the show, that was fantastic, but they didn't have a future to do anything with it. You know what I mean? Like Sean Morgan wrestled his entire WCEF career to win the title in one match. And for a time being, he wasn't ever going to be able to make his entrance with it. He was never going to be able to like cut a promo with it or have the cutout
defend it.
Yeah, defend it. And that's like ultimately the goal of like all of those wrestlers. So it's like, I'm glad that they got like a bonus, like one more month type thing. I think if they do it again, I'd be interested in going out, but I would more want it to be like a reunion show where it's just kind of like we build towards like, hey, here are the matches, and then it's like, here's why these matches are taking place. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I completely understand. I mean, once I saw them return, I was quite surprised because they were one of the first backyard wrestling federations I saw when I first got on Instagram. And we got a message from someone that's Dan Brookshaw. Good evening, and I'm sorry, it's okay, Brett. Dan Brookshaw, just try not to message me as much on Patreon. Jax Delta says hello. But we talked about your run at XCW, your run at ESW, and your run at WCEF. But one thing we haven't talked about is this year. Obviously, you kicked off this year with an ROEW World Title match against CJ Black. But moving aside from that, we'll talk about that later on. But what we're going to talk about right now is, what are your goals this year for 2024? What is your resolution goals for the destructive Jack Delta?
My goals this year are, I feel like as much as I've done and like all of my previous years, right? I feel like there's a lot of like fat essentially on top of all of the wrestling that I've done that I can essentially like cut off, and I have like a prime selection of like matches that I can show. So going forward into 2024, I'm really going to push quality over quantity. I really hope that all of the matches this year that I get myself into are not only of like the most importance to the channel in terms of growing their subs, their views, their likes, their comments, everything that involves with that. But additionally, setting aside the time to make sure the match is like some of the most like top tier quality stuff that I can get. And so if that means I have to not go to companies because they're gonna like book me against like super green guys or like super new guys, and I kind of have to like wrestle my way around them. That unfortunately means I'm gonna have to sacrifice like not putting a few new company logos on my thing. You know what I mean? Other goals for this year, I already mentioned the ESW thing. That is like by far my biggest one. I definitely want to win the ROEW World Championship. I feel like Most of the previous champions have had their like niches for what they've like solved and settled. But like if I won the ROEW World Championship, I'd bring literal new faces to ROEW because they would want to come and face me. And I feel like that'd be like good for the community in terms of like it wouldn't be. Let me put it in a way that makes sense. It wouldn't be people that you see traveling all the time. It wouldn't be Captain Law. It wouldn't be Aaron Blaze. It'd be people that you would never see travel over this way. And I feel like doing that would like really like set the community on fire in terms of like cross promotional like matches and I feel like it'd just be beneficial to a lot of people. And then the only other thing I can really think of is while I'm not necessarily like I'm going for quality over quantity, I still want to keep going towards my like penultimate goal if I can reach it is being the person who has the most like companies in most states on their like traveling list because I'm currently at 8. I'm actually going to a new state this upcoming weekend, so I'll be at 9.
Oh, really?
Yes, I'll be at 9 after this weekend. I have plans for a 10th. I'm not gonna say where it is, obviously.
Fair enough.
But like my idea is I want my legacy to be grander than what it is because there's a lot of shit from like 2023 and 2022 and 2021 that I've done, but I'm not necessarily like gonna show people because I think it's embarrassing or I think it's like not up to the quality that I should be at where I'm at in my career. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. And I think at the moment, the man that holds the spot for the most federations showed up on, I believe it's Captain Law at the moment.
Okay, I'm gonna like rant a little bit because I feel like the 3 people that do the traveling, right, are Aaron Blaze, Captain Law, and Jack Delta, right? And to be honest, I don't know who really kind of started that trend of naming the company logos that we all fucking go to. And Captain Law can argue to me that he has more companies than me, right? But a lot of his, if you go and like actually look at his picture, he has them separated into the companies that he's wrestled for. He has them separated into the companies that he's done work for, like promos and like commentary work or this, that, or the other thing. If I were to include that, I would be well above 30 because like I've sent promos to places I've never worked before. But I don't count that. I'm talking places that I've like my qualification for me, like wrestling for your company, is that I have to have at least one match that is exclusive to that YouTube channel. Yeah. And so like the difference also between us 3 and all 3 of us can go back and forth on it because that's like our little like I feel like that's what we're gonna all 3 end up being like known for in the end is us going back and forth about which places we wrestled. But I feel like the companies that I've wrestled for, I would take my top 10 that I've wrestled for over both of their lists combined in terms of importance for the community, in terms of like quality of wrestling, in terms of like stuff. And that's not shitting on them because they have their own goals, they have their own things that they aspire to do. But like a lot of the companies that they've wrestled for, that are like higher up on their tier list, in my opinion, are like the bottom of the tier for me. You know what I mean? Like both of them wrestled for UWA down in Tennessee, and that is easily like my like top 10 like worst that I've like performed for. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I completely understand it. And someone else is in the chat, and that is YBW Backyard Wrestling, and they say that should only count places you've wrestled in, which it completely gets the whole point of quality over quantity. And now that I'm actually here, would you ever consider going to YBW Backyard Wrestling? I mean, not long ago we did see you and Aaron Blaze face to face. So does that spark anything?
Yeah, and this goes back into like the never-ending tale of me, Aaron Blaze, and Captain Law. But The face-to-face with me and Aaron Blaze actually did lead to a match that I've like told Blaze and I've told Law that I don't want uploaded because I'm not proud of the quality of it. So just know that there is a match that had happened between Aaron Blaze and Jack Delta, but because of the circumstances behind the taping and the reason I'm never ever going to CBW again, there is a match that exists between us. And in terms of YBW, personally, like I think I missed the mark on the taping I was going to go to, just because the only way I'd get there is there was, God, how long ago was it? It was like a year or two ago. Aaron Blaze had personally like reached out and offered a spot to me and Captain Law, and a lot of the like behind the scenes details kind of like derailed that entire taping, and then fucking ATK went and spoiled that we were going to be there anyways. So it was like that soured my like thing initially on it, but how I've been like living my life and being able to like balance the wrestling tapings that I have now is I book them super, super far in advance. And I'm not even going to lie, I'm kind of already booked out for the year with where I want to go. So,
yeah.
And I kind of value going to play, and I know this is going to be like the most like anti-Jack Delta thing I've ever said, but I kind of value going to places with rings simply because I can like show the footage to like independent people if I ever want to get booked. You know what I mean? And if like the most recent thing on YouTube that they see is like Jack Delta wrestling some dude on a tarp, they're not going to like that. And I would never be able to look for them. So not that I'm opposed to it, but it'd have to be closer. Like, I think the only way I'd be able to get there is I think he's like fucking 12, 13, 14 hours of a drive away from me. And like,
wow.
Yeah. And it's like Aaron Blaze is the beacon of YBW and Aaron Blaze travels. So it's like, why would I like drive 12, 13 hours to his place if like I feel like he benefits more coming my way simply because he'd have like a new home to wrestle for that would like value and appreciate him the way that he probably should. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get what you mean. And speaking of Aaron Blaze, he has something to say, and that is Aaron Blaze here. I'm not either. I feel like a handful of good things get ruined by people that have no idea what they're doing. No offense, but it's true. No ill towards Delta. Shit happens.
Yeah.
How's your brother after the match you did? Yes, my brother is fine after the Patreon match we did. Thank you for asking. And you're more than welcome to come down, and I always plan on having a working relationship with you. Well, I mean, that's the whole point. That's the whole fun about backyard wrestling. You get to meet all these new people that you've never met before and make a friendship out of it. But anyways, moving aside from all that and what we have talked about, the company that you are mainly working for at the moment, which is ROEW, their most recent match, it was C Money versus Jason Storm, and it was an I Quit match. And if Jason Storm lost, then he would have quit ROEW. But as he announced on Sportswire Radio, he said that he is retired from backyard wrestling. So we just want to hear from your perspective. What are your thoughts and opinions on CJ Black betraying Jason Storm and him now officially being retired from backyard wrestling?
Well, first off, I feel like that was like you didn't need to skip to the end of the book to understand that CJ Black was going to turn on Jason Storm. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like everybody saw that coming except for poor Jason. And
yeah,
well, like, truth be told, I don't even think I had like an on-screen interaction with like weird, crazy mask like Jason Storm at all before he ended up retiring. But my philosophy on that is I feel like I saw him on Sportswire Radio. I heard him announce his retirement, and he seems to like kind of repent all of his like acting and all of his like character work towards the end of his career. And my idea behind that is I think like nobody truly retires from backyard wrestling. I know he's like on his moment now. I know it's kind of like a thing where it's like he retired, he lost his match, and he got betrayed. So he's at home right now, tending to his boo boos, tending to his like broken ego, like tending to all of that. But the longer he sits at home, the longer he festers there and thinks about how things could have gone different. We're gonna hear that music again. I don't know when, I don't know where. I kind of don't even like care to a certain extent because of like how he was acting. But me personally, I think at some point he'll come back because like fucking Ric Flair was like 800 years old, had his last match, and then wanted to like do another match the next week. So it's like nobody actually like retires with wrestling. Like,
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing with backyard wrestling. You don't like fully go away from it. It's like a part of you. I mean, that's the deal with some of the old backyard wrestlers like Scorpio Sky and some other guys that used to do backyard wrestling like Nick Gage. But it's just something that sticks a part of you. Now YBW says YBW 2024 equals a ring. So I guess they'll announced that they're doing a ring, so about time. I mean, we saw you guys on the top and some pretty good damn work, so who knows what you guys do in a ring. And also, but who knows, maybe CJ Black meets a headline to take that world title hashtag 17th time. I mean, who knows, you might have to be careful with the dude. He might cheat his way through. Good guy. Anyways, can your brother Tombstone use this time, bro? Okay. I just want to say something, Dan Brookshaw.
It happened.
Please stop messaging me. I will do your match. Okay, I will do the tombstones. You don't need to ask me anymore. I'm going to do the match in February. Okay.
All right. No, Brookshaw, tell me why you want to see this brother tombstoned. Like in the comments right now. Like what do you benefit from seeing someone nearly die off a tombstone?
Anyways, while we wait and we'll wait for him to give a response, we'll talk about your appearance on Sportswire Radio. You received a certificate of appreciation. How did it felt when you came back to Sportswire Radio and you received that certificate?
Well, I think you and Sportswire Radio are doing like a fantastic job of like bridging communities and like talking up potential crossovers and getting people familiarized with each other, because a lot of companies are usually just kind of in their own little bubble, you know what I mean? And Sportswire Radio really like set that up, and you're continuing the path of like having all these people on your podcast so people are familiar with it. So it's like your Aussie audience know who I am now. And like my like little bit of like carryover knows who you are because I like share your stuff around. It's like the Sportswire Radio thing. I'll hold it over the Hall of Famer's head. I didn't get a ticket of like appreciation. I got a day. January 8th is Jack Delta Day, and I'm gonna run that into the ground until I die. But no, I absolutely appreciate and I love that Sportswire Radio was able to commemorate me in that way. I think both their podcast and your podcast are doing wonders for the community, and I hope what people take away from these podcasts, if they tune in for 2 minutes, if they tune in for the whole thing, is that like backyard wrestling and like lower independent wrestling is like not the best to watch sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, just because like a lot of people don't really know what they're doing, but these podcasts like shine a light on the people behind the curtain, and you have someone to connect with. So if you aren't like sitting here, like if you watch this and then you go watch my match and talk, like hear about a specific match that I talk about, and then you go and watch it yourself, it's almost kind of like pulling back the curtain enough that you enjoy it. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's what these like two podcasts do. And I think the effect and the results that you guys are getting from doing this is like really good for all of us. So I appreciate you. I appreciate Sportswire Radio. End of sentence.
Fair enough. I mean, I try my best to do the podcast. I mean, I have a stuttering issue and I still try my best to work through it. And I reckon I'm doing a pretty good job at it. So I thank you for giving the compliment. Anyways, moving aside from that, you have basically wrestled most places and you have won a lot of championships. But considering 2024 is a whole new year for everyone in the community, would there be any federations that you would want to go to this year?
In terms of new ones or like
Yes.
returning new ones,
We'll talk about new ones and return ones too.
okay. New ones, I definitely feel like what I need to do in terms of like me, is I've helped establish a lot of big ones, right? Like I established MEBW, I established EBW, I made WWA popular until they like died off. I established places like Omega Michigan Wrestling, TWF, and ROEW to like the general masses of like people, because like after I went to those places is when people started going to those places or wanted to start working for those places. I want to kind of do the opposite of that this year, where it's like I want to go to the places that have like set precedent for backyard wrestling. Places that have thousands and thousands and thousands of subscribers, and like people that have like big fat fucking fan bases, and like get actual comments and feedback on their product. Because it's like it's nice to be able to go to places that have just like a platform that I can do, but it's hard to like really gauge if people like what I do if no one's commenting, right? And like when I went to ESW, if you go back to the two videos I was on, I got tons of comments. And it's because like people do recognize like what I do, but they just don't go out and comment unless it's like a bigger channel. You know what I mean? And I was gonna say the big places that I want to go to this year are the places that like literally are like groundbreaking places. I'm talking like VTW, DBW, NUW, those places. And if I do end up going to like a smaller time company place, right, it would have to be like a new state, just because that's like the only thing I can realistically get out of it, outside of just like maybe a good match or two is like, but I'm avoiding that because I want to do like quality over quantity. So those are the places that I like kind of want to go to this year, are like big, like groundbreaking historic places. So
fair enough. And we've got someone here that's a fan of yours. Hi, Jack Delta. Remember your match against EBW like Logan EXC?
Oh, I know what he means. He's talking about Logan, and then he's talking about Executioner. That's what that like beginning cutoff is. At least I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I remember my time in EBW very fondly. EBW was like the first crossover I did, so it really like set into precedent. Like you can travel with this, you can go meet new people, and like that's the fascinating thing about backyard wrestling is just like. Whether it be Instagram, whether it be YouTube, if you find a set of people and you like the way that they perform, you can message them and go travel there and wrestle them. And that's just such an insane concept. And the stuff with EBW will always be like in my heart because like they were my first, and like I really appreciate like the I took 4 trips to New Jersey in my lifetime. That is like the most times I've traveled to one specific state, I think.
Wow. 4 times.
4 times. Because I went out there the first time. I gotta like retroactively like work this back. Because we went out there the first time and we filmed Worlds Collide 1 and we filmed Unfinished Business. Those were like filmed at the same time. The second time we went out, I filmed my Mania match against Maximus Roman. I think it was like 2 or 3. and we filmed Worlds Collide 3. That was the one with like Thunder and Maximus Roman going crazy with each other. And that's still one of my favorite backyard wrestling matches I've ever witnessed. And then the third time we went out is when we did our run as a group with EBW. So it was like Thunder and Max were a team. I was in the Silenced era. Austin Apex was there. And then the fourth time I went out is when I was out there by myself. And I won the Extreme title. And I had like one final match against Max before they ended. So yeah, I did go out there 4 times. I had to like work that back.
Yeah.
But I love that place. I wish they were still running, but I absolutely love that Max is like leaning into his like filmmaking side of himself, and he's off doing vlogs. And so I love those guys. I wish them all the best.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole fun about backyard wrestling. You meet all these new people and you create friendships. I mean, I wasn't expecting to create a friendship with Striker when I started off backyard wrestling, but look where I am now. I'm running a podcast and I'm meeting people such the likes of you, Thomas Bryce, Aaron Blaze, people from the Backyard Wrestling Nexus. I mean, it's a whole better place.
Yeah, like I message and hang out with you guys more than I do my actual friends. not to say that you guys aren't my friends, but like the amount of times I like think about like all of the stuff that you guys are involved in versus like the actual like hanging out of my actual friends is just like unparalleled and insane.
Yeah, it's surprisingly different now. WWE fan says, "Are you familiar with IMF?" Yes, I have heard about IMF before. And Dan Brookshire has replied, "I'm not saying anything about that, and I'm leaving this now. Bye forever."
No. He left. He's gone. He's gone forever. We will miss you, Brookshire, and your weird requests. I am also familiar with IMF. I know those guys came out to ROEW when I wasn't there, and I did meet the main crux of them at where was XCW Encounters. There were like a lot of people there, and for ages I thought the IMF guys actually hated me because right around when I like took my break, they like weren't happy with that or something. I don't know. And like in character, they like hopped on Sportswire Radio, and anytime I would like hop in there and show like support for Tom or those guys being on there, they'd like shit talk me like pretty bad. So I thought they hated me. So when I met them at XCW Encounters, I thought I was gonna have to like fight those 2 big burly bastards. And what ended up happening was like they talked it over. They're just saying it was character work, and like there's something very like humbling about thinking a guy hates you and showing up and like thinking you're gonna have to fight him, to us sharing a lunch behind his car because he was like nice enough to offer me food. So I'm familiar with them. Maybe I'll work with them in the future. I don't know. Like I don't know.
Potentially, I mean, you never know what the future holds. Dan Brookshire is apparently still here. I'm not bothered if you do a move. I'm not bothered if you do a match. I don't understand what you mean by that, but okay.
I don't understand your accent. Like, no, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, Dan Brookshire. I don't understand what you're trying to say. But anyways, moving aside from that, your Instagram page is surprisingly huge, and it's gotten bigger over the past years. At the moment, I think you're close to 940 followers, I believe. Something around that, yeah?
Yeah, let me hear. While you're talking, I'm going to check the actual...
Okay. Well, it's surprising because you have more followers than most backyard wrestling federations. I mean, you have more followers than BWDU, us, and more followers than most backyard wrestling federations such as ROEW, YBW, and WCEF as well. So how do you feel that you're like nearly at 1,000 followers?
That's crazy. Like honestly, I can't even like quantify like how weird that is having like 1,000 people who could potentially see my content at any time that I upload it. Not counting like the people that do see it but don't like interact with it. You know what I mean? Because there are like dozens and dozens, if like actually at this point there's like hundreds of people that follow me but never interact with my stuff. They're like weird like social media ghosts where it's like they see my stuff, and if they see me in person they'll reference it, but they'll never like it, they'll never comment on it, they'll never share it. And so it's so strange. Like I don't understand why you follow like people if you don't like interact with it. Like what's the point of like seeing it if you're not, but whatever.
I mean, like that's the point with us. We've got about like 300 followers, but then we see like 20 people just interact with our posts. Like it's weird.
Yeah, it's so strange. It's like I don't know, because it's like I'll see, and like this isn't me going like stalkery like girlfriendish, but it's like I'll see people like stuff and share stuff, and it's like I know my stuff comes across your feed. You know what I mean? Because it's not like because it's like
it's not like it doesn't come.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like I'll share it to my story and I'll put like hashtags and stuff in it to like make sure that like even other people see it. But like people that are supposed to be my best friends, like they don't interact with it. But getting to 1,000 though, I feel like you get to that point where it's just like it's almost like that old like Triple H promo where he essentially talks about like you start getting to the point where you know you're doing something right if a bunch of people hate you. And it's because that means like they want to like control how they would like control your social media feed or control how you wrestle or control where you wrestle for. And a lot of people fucking hate my guts. But like a lot of people like keep up with me enough and like care about what I do and showcase like the places that I do that they still follow me regardless. And I'm near 1,000. I don't know how to get over that like little benchmark of getting the extra, because I just checked. It's 938. So I have about 62 to go, and I'll reach that like point. And I don't know how to get over that last little hump, but at some point I will. I know by the time I just hope it's like once I do, I'll probably do some type of celebration for that, because that's actually kind of insane.
Yeah, I mean, for people that are watching in the future, go follow him. Go make sure he gets to 1,000 followers. Now, WWE fan says, guys, ready for the Rumble? What if MJF wins? I mean, I don't think that he is like properly released, because he was mentioned the next show, so I don't think he's properly released. And Tyler Mullins says, what do you think Seth will say tonight on Raw about his injury? Will Punk versus Rollins happen for the title, or will Punk have a new opponent? I reckon Seth will be fine. He just needs to take time off, but I do think Punk versus Seth is going to happen.
I don't know. I think if Punk versus Rollins happens at Mania, I think what's going to end up happening is I think Rollins is going to announce tonight that he's injured. So there's like one of two like scenarios. One, he's fine and he's just going to take time off. Or two, if he relinquishes it, my idea is I felt like the person who was going to win the Rumble was going to challenge for the World Heavyweight Championship anyways. And I think the Rumble itself is going to last minute be for the World Heavyweight Championship.
That's what I was thinking. And then Punk could win it there. And then
Rollins could come back.
Yeah, it's either Rollins could come back or you can continue that feud with Drew McIntyre.
I don't know. I think personally they started advertising Punk for Elimination Chamber, right? Like he was like the first thing they kind of announced for it. I think that's where he's going to make his one-on-one in-ring return on screen, because he hasn't wrestled on Raw. He's only wrestled Mysterio in Madison Square Garden, right, at that live event. So I think they're going to advertise heavily that that's going to be his first one-on-one match since he's come back. It's going to be at Elimination Chamber, and it's going to be against Drew McIntyre, like on screen. Like that's so. Yeah. Whether it be for the belt or not, that's just like that's how I feel like they're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a lot can happen. I mean, we're still waiting for Cody to finish his story, and let's hope that his WrestleMania spot doesn't get taken by The Rock. And WWE fan says Damien can cash in at any time. Honestly, I forget sometimes that he is Mr. Money in the Bank, and I realize why, because he hasn't cashed in yet.
No, I
But
feel like he's gonna either lose that briefcase to Drew McIntyre at some point, or he'll cash in on the stretch to Money in the Bank. Like they're gonna be like pushing it where it's like they've already been like kind of doing that thing where it's like, oh my god, he's gonna cash in, and then something happens. But I feel like
yeah,
at some point during that stretch to Money in the Bank, like the event this year, they're finally gonna have to have him like do it, like,
yeah,
and it's gonna be the world heavyweight because like no one like he ain't cashing in
yeah.
on like Cody or Roman or Rock or any of that. Like that's too far above his league.
Yeah, because it would ruin up the long-term storytelling, they call it. But anyways, moving aside from wrestling, Monday Night Raw, and all that sorts of stuff, you've wrestled pretty much everywhere. You've wrestled on top. You've wrestled in an actual ring. You've wrestled also in front of a live audience too at some shows. I mean, I believe there was a live audience at WCEF's last show, and there was quite a few places that you've wrestled at that had live audiences. And I just want to hear from your point of view, which show you've wrestled for had the biggest live audience?
Oh, that's easily that poor ESW live event that I didn't get the opportunity to like post anywhere because I believe it was 175 people. It was
Wow.
it was a really big fucking crowd. Like that when I got there, and especially with the Texas Heat, man, we were like moving tables and setting up the ring and stuff for literally hours, like putting everything in place. So like we had the best camera angles and we also had the best like crowd interaction. And like maybe it was like someday the promoters at ESW allow me to like post the match so you guys can like see it. But the crowd was like insane there because it was like it's the only crowd that I've ever like gone to that was like layered. You know what I mean? Because like WCEF, it was like maybe like 4 rows of people on each side, but it was like ESW. I went there and it was like completely wrapped around the ring, and then on one side of the ring there was like a canopy, and there were like dozens of people in the building or like under the like draped thing. And the crowd interaction on that one was like phenomenal because it was like I would do a move, right? There was at one point I did like a backbreaker to Jacob Prodigy because that's who I wrestled at that event. And there was a point I did a backbreaker to Jacob Prodigy, and I stood up and I did like a pose, and a bunch of people booed it, and then someone called me Will Ferrell, and everybody started chanting Will Ferrell, and I had to like start like yelling at the crowd, and it was incredible. Like, that's the only like credence thing I will give to like independent wrestling is that like they have crowds, whether they be good or bad, they have people to wrestle in front of, you know, and like it's in matches that you normally wouldn't get a lot of energy from or like have a good feeling about. You'll do better in front of a crowd simply because there's that external force to make everything better. And
yeah,
it's pretty neat.
Yeah, I mean, I was not expecting. I thought the most that you were going to say is around 50, but nearly 200 people. Wow.
Yes.
That's a lot, especially for a backyard wrestling event.
I know. And see, that's the crazy thing about it is just like the only people that care so heavily about backyard wrestling stuff are the independent people that don't want backyard people on their product. But then at the same time, like backyard people will go and host a show that'll like outdraw the indies around them. You know what I mean? And it's like they have the same marketing tools. They have the same like they have the same access to social media. They have the same everything, and they have all of these like trained guys, right? But then like a backyard wrestling company will go and outdraw them, and it's like like I don't know. It's a funny dynamic. There's like pros and cons for each. But I just find it ironic.
Yeah, it's weird how it works, but you'll eventually learn from it.
Yeah, because even like the IMF guys, they're like hosting shows in buildings now, and
I saw that.
Yeah, they like sold out a show that was like 200 to 300 people.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and they're not even like And this ain't like even like shitting on them, but it's like for like up until that point, I didn't think that they didn't have that like dog in them. You know what I mean? Like, um, I didn't know that they were that big that they were able to draw that much of a crowd. So it's like if they're able to draw that much of a crowd and indie place isn't, it's just like,
Yeah, it's weird. The WWE fan says every time he tries cashing in, Drew is waiting for him, who cashes in the middle of a War Games match. Then Randy comes out. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting Damien to win at War Games. I was waiting for Randy to come out. Dan Brookshaw says, I will watch the match in February, bro. I mean, yeah, that's how the Patreon works. And the match that you requested, we'll get it out in February. Now, for people that don't know yet, we have started a Patreon. Make sure you guys go subscribe to that. The money that we are making off the Patreon, it will be contributing into a ring that we are going to build eventually. We just need the money for it, so please help us by subscribing to the Patreon. Trust me, it is worth your money, and we'll see how we go with it. At the moment, we're doing pretty good. I reckon last time I checked, we're making around $54 a month, and
50,
that's
that's
only
pretty
for the.
good. That's pretty good for like backyard. Like that's insane. That's like that should be like, you know what I mean? That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, money-wise difference is also like it's like time zones. It's completely different, but somehow it works out. And WWE fan says, I went to an independent wrestling promotion like 3 times. I enjoyed it. It's called PPW.
Yeah, I mean, there's things that you're gonna end up finding at like indie places that you like. Like, I just like the dynamic of like talking about it, because it's I don't know. It's like theoretically it shouldn't be able to work, right? It's like a backyard
Yeah.
company. People advertise it as a backyard wrestling company, where it's like even the casual people like signing up for it is just like they could go do backyard wrestling. It wouldn't be good, but like they can go do a backyard wrestling. But they'll show up to a show that's advertised as backyard wrestling. They'll pay money to get in to see it, and they'll get like a similar quality, if not better quality, than a lot of independent places because they value like actual production. So it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a funny dynamic.
I mean, that's probably why some backyard wrestling federations succeed more than independent wrestling because like I said, some backyard wrestling federations focus more on quality than quantity. It's like you're
Yeah.
saying.
Well, yeah, they focus on like production value, and I feel like that's something like indie places really don't do. And like
Yeah.
another thing too is like with a backyard wrestling company, it's almost like WWE, where like you have a John Cena that you can like invest in for like 10 years and you can see their story progress across a bunch of videos versus an independent place. You could tune in and like the entire roster could be completely different than last time you watched it. And it's like,
Yeah.
no one cares about that. Like you invest into the certain people that you want to see. It's like,
Yeah. It's like some independent wrestling federations only work on basically who is in the match, but then there's some backyard wrestling federations that focus on long-term storytelling, and that's exactly what you want, and that's what drives the audience into loving your product.
yeah, and you wouldn't get that with indie wrestling because indie wrestling you'd have to follow each individual's like wrestler's social media thing, and that's if they care enough to build the story on their social media. Because a lot of the times you'll like get like because I've seen like a bunch of like people on like Sports Wire Radio where it's like they're indie wrestlers and they talk about like their long-term storytelling, and it's like you're just like making this shit up. No one's able to follow this but you, and the only reason like you even know what this is because you're involved with it. And it's like backyard wrestling, you can follow like a person's like start from the very beginning to the very end of the company, and it's fascinating to watch.
Yeah, exactly. But Jake Hudson says hello, and he says that he's liked and shared. Thank you, Jake Hudson. I appreciate it. WWE fan says it was in a theater. I believe he was talking about the indie show that he went to. And he also says they also have a YouTube channel called PBW Phoenix Pro Wrestling.
I'll check that out.
Yeah, I'll probably check that out too as well. But before we get to the main topic of your interview, I want to say something before we get to that topic. And
Okay.
you have taken a lot of bumps throughout your career. You've been in all sorts of matches, all sorts of stipulations, and you've had all sorts of crazy shit happen to you. So I just want to ask you, what do you reckon was your most hardcore moment in your backyard wrestling career?
God. Okay. Easily the number one spot, like definitely, and will probably never be like outranked based on like how much I value my like safety now. Is I took a rake to the head, and I'm talking not like one of them like pussy shots where you throw your arms up or something like that. Like if I can plug this somewhere, I would. But essentially, dude, literally took the rake and just went whoosh, right over my head. It wasn't my back.
I believe that was MEBW, right?
Yes, it was MEBW. It was a 3 stages of hell match against Matt Thunder, and that rake shot. Believe it or not, I wouldn't advocate to go do it because obviously, dumb untrained wrestler not gonna. But it didn't hurt, which is like crazy. But that spot in of itself is like literally anytime I've ever showed anybody ever, they either call more people over to like look at it out of like curiosity, or they wince and never like speak to me again. And so it's like, I'd say definitely the one that was like hardcore in terms of like painful was definitely the light tube I took in WCEF's final show. Because for ages and ages and ages, all I heard about was like horror stories of like how bad they hurt and like the ways like glass can like stick in you and out of you. And for ages, I was against it simply because there wasn't a big enough reason for me to do it. And like, I'm not going to sit here and be like Nick Gage or be like Necro Butcher and sit here and like take Canadian destroyers on it. But WCEF was one of my favorite places I had wrestled since MEBW shut down. And when I knew it was their final show and I knew I was confirmed to go out there, I agreed to take it because I knew Red X Dark was the one who hit me with it. And I've seen the stuff that he's done, and I trust him with my soul. So he asked me if I wanted to take it. My only regret taking it, and I mean, it looked so good on camera when I got hit with it, and like the glass like stayed on my back. But my only regret was when I made my entrance. I had planned to keep my shirt on until like after the light tube spot, but I made my entrance and then threw my shirt into the crowd, and I looked and I'm like, oh fuck, I forgot to keep my shirt on. Other things that I can like think of off the top of my head. There was one time. This was like the most like hurt I actually got in a match. Was I don't know if you remember this, but the big blow off of like me versus Tommy Gunn on MEBW. We had a no rules kind of match where it was like we had like a bunch of weapons and stuff going on.
Yeah,
and it
like
wasn't
anything goes type of match.
Yeah, and it wasn't anything with the weapons. And so for perspective for people that are watching this that don't know Tommy Gunn, because it has been a while since MEBW has been prevalent, he's a fat motherfucker. and I mean that like he's a big dude. He's like 400, 450. And
oh wow.
Yeah, at a certain point in my match, if you want to go back and watch this, he goes to spear me, right? And he spears me, but when we both go down, I take the bump right where I like took it. And he came down knee first on my knee. So so he like obliterated my leg. And for a minute there, you can see us both sell the normal part of the spear. And then the second you see both of our knees like hit, you can go back and watch it. There's like a minute or two where like there was no selling. It was just both of us on the ground, just like like we're doing that like Peter Griffin, like but those are the ones that like come off the top of my head. In terms of like hardcore or painful, those are like easily the worst or like the top hardcore spots that I've ever taken.
Yeah. I mean, at least the knee was accidental. I mean, the most injured that I've gone in a match, I went to go jump over the top rope of a homemade ring that we built, and I was gonna do a suicide dive onto one of my opponents. Instead of catching me, the dude completely moves away. He pulls a Samoa Joe and walks away, not catching me.
Dude,
I
come on.
I almost break my arm falling onto the dirt, and it was pretty fucking hard. I bounced off of the ground. It was hard.
God damn. No, that's
Yeah.
terrible. That's why you always got to like entrust that like if I was like a skinnier dude and like I did like a lot of dives and stuff like that, I'd only ever agree to do it with people that I've seen catch people.
Yeah.
Because there was this like common joke in MEBW that if I wasn't the person to catch the dive, the other people got hurt. And I was joking about that with Joe Dean when we went to WWA on that like final stretch of their like product, and he was like sitting there like, oh yeah, you're right, Delta. Like I'm not gonna like do one if you aren't there. And then he went and did a tope suicida, the like flip down,
Yeah.
right? There were like 5 guys, and somehow all of them caught him, but still dragged him down enough, and he smacked his head against the ground. He got concussed.
5 guys.
5 guys, and Joe Dean is like the lightest person on the planet. Like,
wow.
Yeah, the amount of times I've been absolutely decimated, like catching someone during like a flip because I don't want them to die, is insane. Like, I could probably go make a compilation. There was like one time. Do you remember Xavier King?
I believe I do. I've heard of the name before.
He was on MBBW for like a decent stretch, and he was like a super skinny kid. But there was one time he did a tope, and literally my body, like this is like my body, it went like this catching him. Like I like bent in on my legs because he came up and he almost overshot, so he almost went behind me. So I had to like, catch him and drag him straight down, like to catch him.
Yeah.
And like nobody I know is willing to like do that. It's just insane.
Yeah, I mean, you want someone bigger than you capturing you, and I completely get that. But
yeah, so in the future, if you like do dives like that, make sure the person is like there to like catch you.
Yeah, just as long as they are there and like nowhere or further or closer, just the right spot, and you'll be good for the dive. Now, Dan Brookshaw says, "I hope you win again, Ace Reed. You are a great wrestler, and I'm a big fan of you. Thank you, Dan Brookshaw. I appreciate it." WWE fan says, "Are you familiar with JX and Paula MBW?" I am familiar with JX. I watched him a couple times in Omega Michigan Wrestling and ROEW. And the other guy, Polar, I am not familiar with.
Yeah, see, that shows you like how like funny the MBW is the company that JX originally came from. Before he worked for ROEW, CBW, Omega Michigan, he worked for MBW. They wrestled on the ground. Him and Polar are both on OMW. So like Polar is also in OMW, but like you wouldn't know that because like Polar's a nice dude, but Polar's one of those like he's one of those people that like attract the like weird commenter type people. You know what I mean? Like he's one of those people that like people like him and his views are always up, but it's not for like wrestling reasons. Like
it's for other reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That makes sense. But anyways, moving aside, we're going to talk about the final thing that I'm going to, basically talk about with you, and that is your match against CJ Black for the ROEW World Championship, possibly the best match of your career, the best match of 2024, and that was a hell of a way to kick off the year, and I believe that match got rated 7 stars by... Who was it by again?
This is the Copper Dragon. He reviews a lot of like wrestling on like TikTok.
Yeah.
He was a part of like a big like backyard federation back in the day called the GWC, and they don't get like too much credit anymore, but they were a part of like a huge group of people that like spawned a bunch of people into the indies. So it's like getting his opinion on that is actually like very incredible.
Yeah. How did it feel that you got a 7-star rating?
Oh, dude, it's fantastic because it's like I followed. There was like a specific match like 6 months ago, like a year ago, that Copper Dragon reviewed, and ever since then I've watched all of his reviews because I like seeing like what his opinions are on like what I, in my opinion, would call like shittier backyard wrestling. And
Yeah.
he'll go and review like a lot of stuff from people that like consider themselves like my friends or like my cohorts or like people that are in the competition with me, and he'll go and review their matches, and he'll have like the same complaints that I would, and sometimes he has better complaints than I would even have. And for ages I really thought that him and JX, CJ Black and JX were going to get the first 7-star because the technical work and like all the stuff in their match was pretty fucking good, man. Like it rivals my match, but I think the chain wrestling I did with CJ Black was much better just because I'm trained to a certain extent, so I know what to look for. And JX, like he flipped around and he did like a bunch of cool stuff, but like a lot of his like selling and stuff isn't proper. And I'm not going to get into that because I don't want to like spoil the business, but it's like the chain wrestling aspect of my part was a lot better, I feel like. And the second I seen that and I knew how much work CJ Black and I had put into the match, I knew it was going to get 7 stars because I knew what that guy was looking for in terms of like quality. And that's the one thing that I've been waiting for ages with CJ Black, is to do a fantastic like technical wrestling like showcase. Because like I can't even quantify the amount of times I've gone to a wrestling company and I'm like, hey, like what are we doing in this match? And the motherfucker says, oh, I'm a brawling type. It's like, it's the worst thing that you could hear because that means they don't know anything. All they do is they think they're Stone Cold, or they think they're like some like ECW guy, and they're gonna run around and fucking stomp a mud hole in me for like 15 minutes. And it's like
just lay a bunch of punches and kicks.
Yeah, and it's just like that is so boring, dude. Like the amount of people that like say they're a brawling type and then like at the beginning of the match they still go for a lockup anyways. Like pisses me off because it's like they're not gonna do anything right. And so like a lot of the technical wrestling I would do in matches before the match with CJ Black would be like I'd have to either like literally for like 30 minutes to an hour go over it with the person and then they still fuck it up, or I would do it and like they say they know technical wrestling, but they don't know anything, and they would sell stuff wrong or they wouldn't like do stuff right. But CJ Black and I literally like the first like 2 chain sequences that we did together were excellent. It's some of the best stuff that I've ever seen in backyard wrestling, and that's not even me being like biased towards myself in terms of like his performance and my performance. Both of them meshed very well to like create that. And then being able to tell the story with like my arm as well throughout the entire match, because a lot of people will they will take a body slam and they'll sell their back, and someone will work on their back for the entire match, and then like right when the comeback hits, they're just running around like their back wasn't like decimated for forever. And like if you go back and just watch my performance part of the match, every single time I would do anything that involved my left arm, I would sell it. Literally, like there's like a point where I was like climbing to the top rope and I was trying to use my left arm to climb on the top rope, but I was like, I can't like actually use it because he's fucking with it. So I had to like literally yell my way up using it because I couldn't get up there otherwise because I'm fat. So it's like, so it's like, a lot of people like forget that when it comes to that, especially like people who get their legs worked on. Like, they'll take like a leg DDT, they'll get in a figure 4, and then like 2 seconds later, they're like running to do like a drop kick, and it's like, how the fuck's that work?
Like some people just no sell the move and completely forget that their leg got attacked like not even like 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, and it's just like, and that's the one thing that like I hope years from now, because like that's the thing with like uploading a video like CJ Black and I, is that and YouTube in general is just like views never go down. You know what I mean? So like over the years, the views for that match is going to climb and climb and climb, and then people who like discover this 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now will be so impressed with that match that they'll probably click on the ROEW page and look for other things and see other matches and like see if the quality of that like kickstarts that. Because like, not to like shit talk other people, but it's like, I feel like the bar that I set with CJ Black is going to be very hard to reach for the other superstars on the roster, simply because they're newer. And it's going to be very hard for other people in ROEW to keep up with that quality of content, so we can like establish ROEW as like one of the best, if not the best, backyard wrestling company because of like matches like that.
Yeah. I mean, I bet a lot of people, even yourself, would consider that the greatest backyard wrestling match of all time, and I can completely see why. The selling was great, the chain wrestling was great, and just the build up to it as well. The long-term storytelling made it even better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, anytime I give like my shit or myself shit over like the amount of like times I had to take a break or like do stuff last year, I think about the fact that if I would have gone through with the plans that I would have had to do, that match would have taken place on that original ROEW like mat and not the ring. And I feel like a lot of the storytelling that CJ Black and I would have been completely out the window because we wouldn't have had the option of ropes or posts or the outside. Like, so I think like in the future, people like will look back at this as like the best backyard wrestling match of all time. But it's hard for people to admit that if they're not in it, if you know what I mean. Because like there are, and I'm sure you're familiar with this too, where it's like you'll upload like so much content, like, but people only ever watch the shit that they're involved in. They won't go out of their way to like watch your shit if they're not in it. You know what I mean? Like, I went and I watched the match you had with Stryker because it was like, this is like me personally, this is like the first time you've broken through that like threshold. And it's just like this like generational like Aussie like showdown. So I went and I watched that.
What did you think of the match?
I thought it was pretty good. For like the first time that you guys like had like met up. I understand why you did it, but I was a bit disappointed that it was like a draw. I feel like it would have been. I feel like it would have been like better if you would have either played it as he beats you because he's the established veteran, and then you like filmed another match that day or something to like reconcile the titles or something, or just not made it for the titles to begin with. But I feel like a draw was a very interesting like way to end it. Oh, you like died.
Oh,
you good?
What happened there?
I don't know. Either you died or I died, but like one of us disappeared for a second. I think yours did because you had like a little spinny thing on your head.
So did yours too. All right, let's continue from there. Anyways, that was a minor delay, but let's just continue from that.
Yeah, but anyways, basically, like the crux of my argument comes from like people only watch the stuff or the shows that they're involved in. Like XCW, I watch XCW. Like I don't watch just the episodes that I'm in of XCW. I watch, or to a certain extent, I watch the people that I know that can perform. You know what I mean? Like I'm not sitting here watching a bunch of the undercard people perform that I don't like necessarily care to watch. But I will tune into other people's matches, so I'm familiar with like where their stories are, like what their character's doing, like what their character work looks like. And I feel like a lot of backyard wrestlers only watch their shit or only share their shit. And like the only time I feel like I see people share shit of other companies is
when they're a part of it.
When they're a part of it or they want to be a part of it. You know what I mean? Like if like say like for example, because like Captain Law and Aaron Blaze are the only two that like travel, right? Say Captain Law wanted to work for VTW, right? And behind the scenes, Captain Law was talking with VTW and they were getting in talks to do shit, right? Captain Law would share VTW stuff until he either debuted, and then he'd stop sharing it, or he'd only share the stuff that he's involved with, or he would share it, and then the plans would fall through, and then he'd stop sharing it altogether. Like, he wouldn't support the company because he supports the company. He supports the company because he's got something out of it. And I'm not saying Captain Law specifically, but those are like, he's like one of the only people that travel, so he's like the scapegoat for this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that goes with really anything, to be honest. Like, it could go with like anything, to be honest. Like, even sometimes on the Wide Up podcast here, like, sometimes people would only share it only because they're a part of it or they want to be a part of it. It was one or the other. But yeah, it really just goes with anything, to be honest.
Yeah, and that was, I forget what the original like point of like this entire like rant was, but yeah, that's just my basis for that argument, because I feel like a lot of people only do that like because like the only people really like realistically sharing me and CJ Black around for the longest time was me and CJ Black, because we were involved in it. Like, you almost have to essentially like post about it every goddamn day until it finally like clicks in someone's brain that they're going to go and watch it. You know what I mean? Because like I'll hear retroactively that people have gone and watched me and CJ Black. Like, people will like randomly message me, like, literally, I got a message like 2 or 3 days ago, like, man, that match was fantastic. I'm like, brother, it has been posted for almost a month now. Like,
but yeah, no, that match, honestly, it's already been not even a month yet, and people are already saying that it is the match of the year.
Yeah, and it was the first match uploaded. And the best part of it too is ROEW was at like just above 500 subscribers when the match before the match got posted, and I think it jumped like 20 or 30 subscribers from that match alone.
Yeah,
and it being a single match, so like this is like how I compare like draws versus not draws in wrestling, right? Me and CJ Black is a single match uploaded by itself, versus all of the other like shows on ROEW have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people on it, right?
Yeah.
And there are 4 or 5 matches on it, and those particular videos are just now reaching 1,000 views. But me and CJ Black, being like 2 or 3 weeks old, is just about to reach 1,000 views. So the combination power of like 7 to 8 guys versus just me and CJ Black, versus like the marketing, the social media aspect of sharing around with it, and like us marketing ourselves the way that we do, we were able to successfully like actually get this match out there and have people talk about it. So like that's probably like the biggest takeaway from it, is that like people actually went and watched this match.
Yeah, I mean, you had all sorts of people commenting on it, saying how good of a match it was. Like, you had people such as the likes of Mike Lopez, Sportswire Radio, even Tennessee Backyard Wrestling commented on it, which I was quite surprised by it, to be honest. But I guess a lot of people really were intrigued with the match, and you weren't lying when you said it was going to be the greatest backyard wrestling match of all time. And if people don't think that, well, we'll at least consider it the Mount Rushmore of backyard wrestling matches.
Yeah, and if you don't have an actual like human brain, and you need like monkey brain to go watch this match, there's a highlight video of the match that's 4 or 5 minutes long instead of 30 minutes. That encapsulates most of the moves. So you can go watch that instead as well. Which that one alone, I think, got 100 or 200 views. So you can like stack that on top of the other one as well.
Yeah. So then you got pretty much just over 1,000 views now at that point.
Mm-hmm. And for backyard wrestling, that's like insane numbers, because it's like how I view like views for wrestling is essentially like, I know it's kind of like over time, right? But like 1,000 views essentially means you would have 1,000 people in your crowd. That's how I view like every video for wrestling posted. So like if a promo gets 75 or 100 views, that means you drew 100 people to your video and listened to you rant about whatever you ranted for God knows how long. And if you wrestle a match or you wrestle an event and you get 1,000 or 1,500 or 2,000 or 3,000 views, I view that as, unless it's like a few like alternate accounts here and there rewatching their own shit. You know what I mean? That's like selling out that much of a venue. And like some of them like views like outdraw a fucking Impact or like TNA at this point. So it's like, that's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the same with me and Striker. Like, I was not expecting that video to get. I think it's got almost 2,000 views now, and it drew pretty much like around 50 subscribers within the span of like a week, which took me by surprise, to be honest.
Yeah, dude,
But
and that's what I mean. Like, not milking crossovers and just having people on like everybody's rosters. Really does like show, because like people like that means you had a market that you hit with doing this crossover match with Striker. You know what I mean? Because like before the podcast, I talked to him about this, but it was like there have been so many companies that I've seen from like Aussie land show up in backyard wrestling and want to be a part of the community, but none of them ever crossed over with each other, like ever. There was like CMW, there was MXW. And like I know Striker kind of went there, but it wasn't like a dedicated like MXW versus ETW thing.
yeah,
With you
it
and
wasn't
Striker,
like a proper collaboration.
yeah, with you and Striker, it wasn't like you were a part of the ETW roster, and it wasn't like he was a part of the BWDU roster. So it's like we were getting face versus face of the companies, like, and that's where like that like. That's where the like views come from, because people like, even if they don't necessarily like specific companies or that or the other thing, they'll click on the video just to see which company they put over. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because they're like, oh my god, ETW versus BWDU. It's like these are two separate companies, two separate entities. They go face to face. Who's going to win the match? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So it's like that. That's why like crossover competition, like in that aspect, works so well. And I feel like we kind of lose that with like me, Captain Law, and Aaron Blaze being on every roster at the same time. But stuff like that draws views, and people don't like realize that. They think if they just go out, they have fun, they have their brawler type matches, and they don't train anymore, or they don't come up with like any interesting ideas that people are going to like watch their videos, and then they wonder why like their views are in the fucking shits. That's why. Me and CJ Black was refreshing because we took a lot of time practicing. We like nuanced so much shit to like face the camera when we're doing moves, and wrestling specific ways, and selling specific parts of our body, and like keeping like the story aspect of it. Because like 2 days ago, I wrestled a few more ROEW matches that'll be out soon, and we spent the entire day like practicing and doing stuff. And those matches are going to look fantastic when they come out. Fantastic. And it's because we took the time to practice. So that's that quality over quantity mindset that I'm keeping for 2024 and the future.
Yeah. I mean, that's what basically me and Striker were trying to do for our match at Final Countdown. We were practicing on each other what moves we wanted to do. And we practiced the Canadian Destroyer that I wanted to do on him, and it turned out really good.
Yeah, that's excellent. I hope in the future, like whatever like the future of you and Striker holds, that you're able to like recapture that magic next time you like do stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's given me like after that match, it's definitely given me a drive to improve on my matches and make the next match better than what my last match was. And that's the goal, what I'm trying to go for.
Yeah, and another like fantastic point with like crossover stuff too is like a lot of the times the only people that really want it are the face of the company, right? So like when like Striker and you like did stuff, it's because you wanted it, right? And so when the undercard of your company sees that you went out and wrestled Striker, this like guy who like helped establish ETW, and he's like in the indies in Aussie land now, and he's done work for all these other promotions and stuff, and they see the match that you had with this guy that you traveled for, it pushes the undercard to get better as well. Like I'm sure there are probably like one or two guys on your roster that seen you wrestle Striker, and they're like, oh my god, that spot looked fantastic, or like this, that, or the other thing. And then they slowly get more interested in it. And that's what I like really hope for when I like cross over to places. Like I go to a specific company and they're like, oh man, like Jack Delta's like actually here. Like I've seen him on Instagram once or twice. I've seen him in pictures with like guys I know, but now that I've met him, I know he's like a nice dude, and I can like ask him for advice and this, that, and the other thing. And that's what I always hope for with like crossover competition. Is that like the undercard people really like want to improve from that.
Yeah, and I think that's what's going on with BWD at that moment. At the moment, I mean, ever since I've wrestled Striker, a lot of the guys have been wanting to get better, and I've been practicing chain wrestling with them, and they've been slowly improving, which is what is most important about backyard wrestling, pretty much.
Yeah, and like I would say probably like the final note is in terms of like people improving, it's so easy in my opinion to improve now simply because wrestling has been exposed so heavily that like you can literally YouTube videos and figure out how to wrestle. And because of that, I feel like people are missing out on the opportunity to actually sit there and learn how to do stuff. Or when they watch wrestling, they don't watch wrestling like, oh man, like I'm going to take that spot from the guy. Because like every time I watch wrestling, I see shit that I'm stealing for my next match. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like if people did that when they actually watched wrestling, like not sit there and do like something that like WWE on Raw just did. You know what I mean? Like don't do like the Seth Rollins slide out and put your arm over Rhea Ripley type thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They just did that. But I'm talking like old wrestling. I'm talking like you find something on YouTube or you watch like some old TNA or you watch like a random indie company that comes across your YouTube feed or something like that. Steal stuff from that because ain't no one gonna know what that is. But yeah, like frozen again.
That was a delay, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was like a delay. You like had like a fuckboy face for like 30 seconds. Yeah, you had like that like face. You're like frozen.
Anyways, moving aside, we're gonna wrap this up very soon. But as I was saying, even like some.
You do it again. Who's freezing? Because it's like I'm moving on my camera.
I think it's me. But
Okay.
we'll wrap this up now in case it does it again. So we'll do it right now. But yeah, it was a pleasure having you back on the Wide Up podcast again. It was definitely glad to have you back, and it was definitely glad to we've been at this interview for nearly 2 hours now. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, we went
That's
we started and we just started flowing.
Yeah. I mean, that's the longest I've ever interviewed someone, if I'm being honest.
Wait, really?
That is the longest that I've interviewed someone. The highest that I've interviewed someone, the longest was probably Atomic Time with like 1 hour and 9 minutes. Now this is like pretty much the span time of a movie. Wow.
Yeah.
But anyways, moving aside, Jack Delta, I appreciate you for coming back onto the Wide Up podcast, and I appreciate everyone that took their time to watch this, and for people that are watching in the future. Well, this is the interview, and while we're here and we're live right now, I might as well announce it. February 2024. What's next for the Wide Up podcast? The next guest of the Wide Up podcast, I will be interviewing IMF's Owen Black. Yes, he will be coming on to the Wide Up podcast, so everyone stay tuned for that. And actually, before we wrap up this interview, I'm going to ask Jack Delta this one more question, and that is, what is next on your path of becoming the ROEW World Champion?
Well, next on my path is like the simplest thing, and we started building towards it on Instagram. C Money said he is next in line for an ROEW championship match, and I disagree simply because CJ Black, I'm not finished with you. You might have beaten me, but you disrespected me, and that's worse than beating me, in my opinion. So you could have like let the chapter die. You could have let the book page like end. But essentially, you kick the rope one last time, and that's sealing your fate that you're giving me the ROEW championship. So if I have to run through C money, I'm gonna do it.
Well, there you go, everyone. That is Jack Delta's last message before this interview is coming to an end. Jack Delta, I appreciate you coming back onto the Wide Up podcast. It was a pleasure having you, and it was a pleasure interviewing you once again. And I realized myself that I have improved a lot from where I've started on this podcast. I mean, I'm pretty sure you remember.
No, that first podcast, I'm not gonna front on you. It was a little like struggle because I could tell you were like a little bit nervous, maybe a little bit tired. But this time you had such a better flow of questions that led into each other that we literally ran for the length of a movie and you didn't even realize it. Like,
yeah. I mean, I'm slowly improving, and I think that's the best part about it. And I'm working on my stuttering issue, and I reckon the podcast is helping me with it. And I reckon by the time, probably the end of this year, I'll overcome it. I mean, we'll see what the future holds. But everyone that is watching, Jack Delta, take care. I will see you next time. Goodbye.
see you next time.